Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining this afternoon's webinar. I know it's a nice day outside. I thank you for putting aside a little time this Saturday afternoon to learn a little bit more about our plans for the return to school. Hopefully you all find this webinar helpful. I'm Christopher Montini. I am the Superintendent of Schools.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Cooney. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Schools.
As we begin today, I want to start by telling everyone and making sure that you realize that we realize that this is incredibly impactful. It's incredibly stressful, anxiety provoking, not having the answers, not knowing what lies ahead. Work and childcare, COVID-19 and the pandemic since March for many of us has impacted us in numerous ways. And we don't take lightly, neither Melissa or myself, all of the decisions that we're making in regards to the return of school. Our approach to creating these plans is one not only of a superintendent and assistant superintendent, but also that of a mother and a father. We both have school-age children. We are both navigating the stormy waters that are in front of us and the unknown. So the anxiety that you feel, we too feel as parents ourselves, and we draw upon that and hopefully use that to guide our decision making, both in terms of the education and the parent perspective. We apply that to all that we're doing. Now, the next bullet, it says this is not ideal, and that certainly is, to say the least. No matter what plans are put forth, there is no substitution for school the traditional way. There's no substitution for being permitted to socially engage, be in school all day, engage in activities, hang out with friends, sports, extracurriculars, the arts. The plans that we put forth are gonna look very different than the ideal. We're not in a very good situation. We're tasked with creating return to school plans in certain context. So it's not going to look like the ideal. And I know you know that, and I hope you know that we know that. The plans are difficult to develop, just as it's difficult for parents to choose when you don't have all of the answers. We currently are in this mutual, we have this mutual need where we can plan better our programs when we have information from parents, and you can make a more informed decision when you have information from us. So hoping we have a little more today so that we can provide each other with some important information as our plans develop for September and the beginning of the school year. The health and safety of all of our students, our faculty and our staff is our priority. And our task is to safeguard those things while providing high quality learning experiences despite the situation, despite COVID, and despite whatever approach to learning your children engage in, be it distance learning, hybrid, in the person, or at some point during the year, a little bit of all of them. We just don't know, but we do know that our goal is, no matter the situation, to take advantage of the opportunities that are put forth and to provide high quality learning experiences in that approach. And that is what we're going to work really, really hard to do to provide for you and your children. So our plans, folks, were guided by the four principles that are on this page. And I think it's important to start that we value these four principles. They align perfectly with our vision of the graduate, which guides our work every single day, and that hasn't gone away. We still are working to cultivate and to help students grow towards the vision of the graduate. So when they leave Naugatuck High School, they are empowered and they have choice. They're the masters of their fate, and they choose their destiny, whether it's college or any other opportunity that they may choose. So nothing new that personal relationships is sort of the cornerstone of our work. We care very much for our students and their families, and we're going to work, whether it's on the other side of a screen, in person, or again, a little bit of both, to develop strong relationships with our students and their families. The aforementioned health, wellness, and safety for all. The school is going to look different. We will have protocols and procedures, and the rooms will be a little more barren and stark. But we believe students can come back with the appropriate safety calls, and we can mitigate and lessen the chances of transmission. We also, the next two on the right side of this matrix, access and opportunity for all. All means all. And some folks have written to me and they've said, I have 3 different kids, and one's super bright, one has some learning needs. I want all of them to be pushed at the appropriate level. And that's what access and opportunity for all and meeting and exceeding high expectations means to us. It means that our job is to push and challenge every student, no matter what. Those that need support, those that need challenge, everyone needs challenging. And we want to provide those high quality learning experiences to everyone. Not saying that that's going to be an easy task moving forward with numerous models simultaneously. But that is our job, and that's what we're going to strive and work really hard to do. And we're going to communicate with you along the way. So some of the chat questions or some of the questions in the chat at the onset of the meeting, we're going to ask that if you do have questions throughout, that you use the chat feature. And there's a little bubble likely on the bottom of the floating icon, or perhaps on the top if you moved it or have a different setup. But you click on the chat feature and you can type your question in, and we will try really hard to answer it in the context of this meeting or at the end during the questions and answers. Some of the trending questions I'm posting here and giving you a few more minutes to look at, so that you might not waste your time, or we don't have 10 or 15 people typing the same question. So we're gonna incorporate, why are students not eating in school, and can they? What are the times for the September plan? Class sizes? How much social distancing where there'll be? Can we switch to in-person if we don't like distance learning? Which approach for distance learning will be used for those who opt for virtual? That's that was a frequent question. When is the first day of school? How will my child's IEP be implemented? Will there be after school care? Masks, heat? Those are just sort of big categories. I didn't phrase it in terms of a question. And what plan will the middle school follow? So if we don't get to these, please, if we forget, and I'm doing a lot of talking, type it in the chat. We'll either answer it today in the context of this meeting or at the end, or we will add to our frequently asked questions page on our website. So on our websites, if you go to the homepage, you'll see that there's the Return to School tab. And on the Return to School tab, you'll see previous communications. And then you'll see the Return to School Q&A. So if you haven't navigated here, whenever we've been getting questions, we have been working really hard to populate this page. So will you serve breakfast? I'll just give you an example. It describes the September plan breakfast, and this was just random, plan 2 / the hybrid breakfast, and distance learning breakfast. So our staff has been working really, really hard to try and capture all questions that have been asked of us and to document them here. So if you're able to have, if you have 2 screens, or you're able to navigate here in the meeting or after, this is a really, I think can be a really helpful tool and or resource for the community. I want to share with you main operational operational considerations and mitigation strategies. The purpose of today's meeting essentially is really to get into the plans, and I know you're hungry for what are the specifics of some of the plans and how it's going to impact you and basically your life, since we realize that school and schedules, et cetera, certainly does that. So these main operational considerations and mitigation strategies are those which are going to be implemented across schools. They're found throughout our plan, and we'll briefly cover them now and answer questions if you have questions related to these, but we're not covering all of these at length. So cohorting. Cohorting is really important. Cohorting is going to take place for students in grades K-8. And what that means is a cohort is a group of students who stick with the same teacher and educator. The students stay the same and the teachers move. So if you think of a homeroom class staying in room 2, and if the STEM teacher or the math teacher after their ELA class they need to get their other subject, that teacher would move into that particular room. So basically it's like an elementary model, but when the kids switch in the upper grades, at least up through 8, teachers will be moving rooms and kids will be staying put because that's more sanitary. So, and I want to be crystal clear here, we in our original plan that was sent out on the 24th, and that is yet to be corrected, posted online, we started with the mindset that we were going to be able to cohort in 9 through 12. That is not true anymore. Students in 9-12, we won't cohort. It became logistically not really a viable option without having to drastically change offerings to students. And then on top of it, sports was released after that, which essentially would blow cohorts anyway. So we'd be academically losing a lot of choices for students. And for cohorts that we wouldn't maintain if any student played in a sport, since we wouldn't be able to cohort our sports in alignment with the cohorts during the day. So what we do have though in high school is we will have 9 and 10 classes are able to stick together a little bit more because there's not as much choice in electives. But what the high school has done is they've moved rooms by grade level. So we basically have grade level wings, so they won't be going to all areas of the building. So they've sectioned off the building to provide for a much better way of travel. So essentially that's cohorting. Hand washing and sanitizing is super important. We've been installing no-touch hand sanitizer and hand washing everywhere, and we're continuing to do that. And as we do that, we have pumps near our washing stations. We'll develop schedules, and we will train students and develop protocols and routines where they consistently are hand washing and sanitizing. So we will be implementing health protocols. Our health protocols are really important in regards to, being on the lookout, monitoring, and what we do if we have suspected cases, how we're going to contain it, et cetera. You can read those at length. They're in the plan. Face coverings, which is a frequently asked question. It's on our website, and it's still being asked, via email, on social media, et cetera. All staff and students are expected to wear a protective face covering or face mask that completely covers the nose and mouth when inside the building. Now, there are a few medical exceptions to that, and that is, again, that's in our plan. We can elaborate on that at the end if people have more specific questions in regards to the face coverings. But the face masks, that applies to everybody K-12. The Office of Early Childhood, which provided guidelines for preschool. So those students who attend the Early Childhood Center, if the families would like them to wear masks, they may, but they're not required of our preschoolers. All staff, I will just say in regards to face coverings, all students and staff will be provided a cloth face mask. We ask that families make sure that their child comes to school and every day with a face mask, take care of the cloth face mask. You certainly are welcome to wear your own. I know if you have little ones with, in my family, perhaps little chins and big noses, the fit of a face mask for the little ones can be specific in particular. You can feel free to wear them as long as they're not in violation of our dress code in regards to, vulgarities and those kinds of things printed on them. So we also will provide a face mask in the event that two people, staff and students, in the event that a face mask becomes unusable or if they forgot. And those will be available on the bus, in our classrooms, at central office and in the main office. We certainly will have backup. Social distancing, a really important mitigation strategy. Classrooms will be configured to maximize spacing and social distancing to the maximum extent feasible. So that's probably not as crystal clear and exact as some people would like, but we can't give a number because until we know the number of students, in a particular class, we won't have an exact number. We're going to maximize it. We're going to strive to get to 6 feet, but in many places it could be 4 feet. We've purchased about 3,000 plexiglass dividers-ish, some that go for students on desktop, some that are barriers for the teacher's desk that we will use to help us provide distance between, two students. We do still have some tables, although we purchased many, many more desks. We do have some tables where two kids are at a table, let's say 3 feet apart with a plexiglass divider in between them. So desks and tables, students will be facing the same direction. They'll be wearing the masks in the classroom, and we will have the added layer of plexiglass in many places. Another really big mitigation strategy are our cleaning and our sanitizing protocols. Those, like the health protocols, are fully articulated in the plan. We have schedules that are being developed for every individual custodian by shift, by name, so that we have an accountability structure to ensure that things are cleaned and sanitized in alignment with the CDC and Department of Public Health guidelines. So these things are going on in all of our plans. And they are really important, of course, for us to safeguard the health and safety of everyone, students, families, staff, et cetera. So we were tasked, and by we, I mean every district, to create 3 plans for the state of Connecticut due on July 24th. We were to create, and if you look at this graphic, essentially it implies a continuum all the way over to the left, a continuum of a high risk, high transmission state. We would be in distance learning. So our task was to improve upon our distance learning plan based on the feedback from our constituents, parents, students, and teachers. We administered at the end of last year surveys, and we sought to improve our distance learning plan. So that's a plan that we have to have, and that would be our most restrictive plan. That's what would happen in the event of a shutdown. We also were tasked with developing a hybrid, a moderate. And at this point, the moderate level, this is a moderate level of disease based on the metrics, which were recently published, which would be greater than 10 for every 100,000 in terms of a transmission or prevalence rate. We would develop a hybrid, which essentially would be 50-50 in and 50-50 distance, combination of both. We also were tasked, and at this point, as of July 24th, with a fully in-person plan during times of low-level disease transmission that we would be required to reopen fully. And that was true up until July 27th, when things changed. So the graphic is structured this way, folks, from high to low, because a lot of people are asking, well, what comes next? I understand that it's going to be fluid. Well, what comes next? What's going to happen on October 2nd? Hopefully, we'll be able to at least share thinking, so that would give you some insight into what may happen in October. So again, now we created our plans. Plan 3 in the document: improve distance learning. Plan 2, the hybrid plan where students go to school part-time and learn at home part-time. And then Plan 1, as you know, there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of information wanting for Plan 1 in regards to 1B, the opt-out. So we submitted plans to the state for all students to return to classroom learning at the start of the school year. And we planned for students who, or were planning to choose to continue to learn online from home at the start of the school year. So then, and there's a lot to this slide, but this essentially sums up sort of our plan and or our continuum. Then on July 27th, the governor announced that there was going to be local control, some local decision making. Well, there were certain factors that local districts considered now that they had this newfound control or this newfound flexibility, I'll call it. Because up until that point, and I don't want to get too deep or go off on a tangent, but up until that point, the legislation and the laws didn't provide for any grade level other than the high school to really have online learning that could count. So it's my understanding they're developing those executive orders currently and that they will be in place prior to the start of the school year. So getting back to now on July 27th, we find out that there's going to be some local flexibility. So as a district, we were considering such factors as class size, teacher workforce, and building density and enrollment. Those are the major sort of local data points that we were evaluating in conjunction with the transmission data, the COVID data. So this page, shades of gray intentionally, that starts with that continuum on the left, Plan 3, 100% of students in distance learning, moving all the way to the right. I don't know if you can see my arrow here, but moving to the right with traditional schooling. And in the middle, you find a hybrid and you have a fully in-person plan. And the reason that there's a difference between Plan 1 and traditional schooling all the way over on the right is, even if we get to this year, Plan 1 fully in person, it's still not going to be the traditional school where somebody can come off the bus and run and hug their teacher. I mean, that might happen anyway. We may need to, give physical cues, but we're still going to be looking at safety precautions throughout the year, really until, I guess until there's some type of cure or this goes away or for the foreseeable future. Which is why in early August, the 3rd or the 4th, I had sent out a plan that was different than what we had sent out after July 24th. So with that new flexibility, we considered district factors, because up until that time, folks, we had been told you have to open. We're in a low transmission. Connecticut right now is among the best in the state. And if you take a look at all of the maps, there's like 3 green states and a whole red, United States, which we are taking and utilizing that and thinking that as we make our decisions as well. So with that being said, even though this arrow here goes to the right, you're going to notice that it also goes to the left. And I think parents that have written to me, even those that are telling me or asking me to consider a different plan, or can you increase the length of the day, or I think they understand, or they've been communicating, they understand the fluid nature of this. But at the same time, as parents, we want to know. We want to know. But it could be based on COVID data and, of course, local factors, class size, teacher workforce, enrollment, density, et cetera, that we go to the left as well. So the plan that was sent out is a early dismissal version of Plan 1 for K-6, and a hybrid early dismissal version of the hybrid for 7-12. So middle school folks, that's the first time I think that I'm telling you that middle school, the plan is on August 8th, that middle school is going to start in the hybrid. Quick little aside. So Sometimes people have written to me and you used words like, can you tell me the exact plan? And, using the word exact and being finite. I want to be able to provide you with some concrete details and to be able to commit for a few weeks of school. Just know that our task and our job is to be responsive to the environment and the changes that are in front of us. So when we sent out the plans for September, we developed them for the month. One, so that we can try to be concrete for folks to plan for the month. And two, to address the following bulleted list. And I put this in the communication to everybody. The transition back to school after a long closure. I don't think we can take lightly the fact that students haven't been in their classrooms for quite some time. We are prepared to support folks. And when I say folks, I mean our adults and our students, right? But the transition after a long period of time is going to require some support. We developed a plan for September to address heat throughout the first month of school. So having taught in and been in all of this, well, been in, of course, all of the schools, taught in a few of them, I know that September in our schools can get really, really hot. And it does cool, it is cooler in the morning. I'm not saying that it's going to be optimum. I'm not saying that if I go in there with this shirt and tie that, I'm not going to be sweating, that it is warm in the school in September. And as you know, all but 3 of our schools, they don't have AC. Only in 3 of our schools do we have that. Something that we are going to remedy in the long-range plan, but not something that's able to be fixed in the short term. So it addresses heat throughout the first month of school. This will likely allow us to continue with school on hot days because we're already getting out at an early time. So one of the questions, frequently asked questions, is how are you going to deal with the heat? Well, that's why we are modifying for the first month. One of the reasons why we're modifying it to an early dismissal schedule. Another sort of mitigation strategy, if you will, we know that masks is a mitigation strategy. We know that folks wear masks so that droplets won't circulate into the air. We know that we are contracting with vendors to ensure that ventilation systems are working effectively, and doing working the way that they're supposed to, right? So we're contracting with engineers and architects and vendors to make sure that that happens. But when students eat, and they are not permitted to eat in large congregations such as the cafeteria, in some of our initial plans, they're eating in the classroom. But when students eat, of course, they have their mask off. So one strategy was, given the heat, can we create a plan which would avoid eating to the extent possible in school for the first few weeks of school, for the first month of school? Also, even though we've had many students that participated in distance learning, we have our new students new to the district. We also have students that have transitioned to schools. Everyone's going to be transitioning to new teachers, and a whole bunch of new kindergarten kids coming in. That we know our job is to be prepared as a school system to respond to the changes in data in regards to COVID and be prepared to move between any of the 3 plans really quickly. So that's one of the reasons why when I have the opportunity to engage with some parents, I'm asking that I think it's great that we want answers for how we're going to start for September. And that's in the forefront of our minds. We as parents also should begin to start thinking about, if we haven't already, what we're going to do if we go to distance learning and what we're going to do during a hybrid as well. Because the likelihood, if we see what has been happening in some other states, it may, that can occur. I don't know that it will. I'm hoping, of course, that it won't. We've also, if you've worn a mask, And if you've worn the mask in heat, you know that it takes some getting used to. And that in the first the first month of school, having the early dismissal day would allow us to build the stamina of wearing masks, especially for the younger students. So we build the capacity to virtual and in-person simultaneously to be ready for all of our plans. And we also created the plans, this adaptation, this early dismissal aspect of our plan, maximizing and prioritizing in-person learning for our youngest students and those with special needs. So if you think back to our guiding principles, personal relationships is at the core of what we do. And for our youngest students, them seeing their teacher every day was a goal. And that is right next to density enrollment of our large schools. We also know that particularly with our 712 schools, our middle school and our high school, they're large, they're dense schools. We don't have it is looking at, well, I don't know what the class size in the middle and the high school is exactly. It's trending better in the lower grades. And we use those data points to make the decision between K-6 in person 5 days a week. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. It's the next slide. But those two things were considered certainly when we were deciding which plan would suit which particular grade level, and have all the plans work together in concert with each other for the month of September to achieve what we set out to achieve, which is a really successful transition back to in-person learning in school. And ultimately, that's the goal, is that we would transition and over time be able to build our capacity and increase time spent in school for all grade levels. Being transparent with our information with parents in the community, so that you'd have the confidence to say, great, yeah, September was really good. We didn't have any, there were no real major issues, there are no outbreaks. And hopefully in October, we're having a conversation where we're ready to increase, and we're ready to have kids come back to school even more. So that said, here is what September is going to look like. Now, first, you'll see K-6 on the left, you'll see 712 on the right. And this is the instructional plan for September as of today. So for students in K-6, in-person learning following an early dismissal schedule, not the early dismissal schedule. So while we started with the early dismissal schedule, that was a little too late to not have students eat lunch in school. And we thought if our classes were trending smaller than normal, that not eating in the class was the way to go. And I'm saying that as opposed to choosing the hybrid. So some folks have asked, why didn't you choose the hybrid for K-6? Well, again, I believe from an educational perspective, our K, our 1, our 2, our K-6 students need to see their teachers. And I think it's much better educationally to see them every single day and then extend some learning virtually in the afternoon than it is to come 2 days and 3 days virtual. So 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 3.5 hours a day. K-4 students will have snack time. And I know you're saying, wait, Chris Montini, you just said avoiding eating. So a snack and a meal are two different things, and it's much easier. We're thinking that we can incorporate snack time into a mask break, hopefully on most days, be outside while students are having an apple or a granola bar or a bag of goldfish or what have you. But our K-4 students are used to having, many of them are used to having snacks as is. Lunch would be grab and go, and the rest of the day would be virtual. There'd be about an hour and a half in the middle of the day where they would grab their lunch, travel on the bus, go home, have their lunch, or go to their childcare or whatever arrangements families are making, and have their lunch, and then they would have another class or two online in the afternoon. So for our K-6 students, that's likely going to be specials other than PE. So the goal for K-6 is that we could rotate PE and deliver that outside in person in shorter blocks so that they get outside without their mask and we can space out, more than 6 feet, weather permitting, of course. And then the other unified arts would be provided virtually in the afternoon, where we would work with families on week-long, assignments to be flexible for those families. I've had a number of families write to me and say, I'm a single mom, I'm a working parent, I don't get home till 7 or 8. Is there going to be flexibility in regards to any virtual aspect of any plan? Because my students in 2nd or 3rd grade, and I don't get home to help them into the evening. So the answer is yes. So what I was remiss in saying is that when we developed our charter to do this work, 3 of the, I'll call them for lack of a better term, guiding principles, but I guess was flexibilization, adaptability, and customization. So we know that this is turning the world of our parents upside down. By that, I mean COVID, not this plan, although I do acknowledge the impact of these individual plans on your lives, or all of our lives. That being said, we do realize that, and we are going to be flexible in regards to most due dates and assignments and all of that. So I'm going to shift over to 712 before we take it and get a little more specific. So in terms of 712, again, I know I put in the original letter that's 7 through 12. 7, 8, I never committed. I don't know if it was last night or this morning committed, but I'll be honest, I had a hard time committing. I would love to get the middle schoolers seeing their teachers every single day for the half day. But then again, I guess if we're asking, what we would love to make happen, I certainly would want everybody back in person all day and everything to be, safe and be like it was. That being said, our middle school is a large school, 700 students. And if I'm considering density and prioritizing in person in the lower grades and looking at class size, that the middle school will start September, like the high school, on an alternate hybrid schedule following an early dismissal schedule. So it's 3.5 hours as well. Students will attend either Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, and everyone has virtual on Friday. That's that one day where the whole class will actually be together, both Group A and Group B, and have some really great live instruction on that day from their teachers. So on the in-person day, the in-person day is a hybrid. It's also in person for 3.5 hours and virtual in the afternoon on those days. And sort of for full transparency, there's no perfect plan. What I don't love for 712 is that their 2 days in person is on the 3.5 hour schedule. However, I can't extend that and not have and have our K6 students. If I extend that, then either 712 gets home after K6, which doesn't work for many families in regards to childcare, or K6 ends up eating in the classroom. And I think a better way to start the school year and to transition is to avoid the 20 minutes with our little ones having their mask off, or 30 minutes eating in a classroom. So that's how 712 is going to start. And this might be sort of ad nauseum, but the disclaimer down bottom is obviously plans can change. While I would love for us to continue to maintain the nice low numbers that we have in Connecticut, at any time if something happens, we need to be prepared to shift. If we do that, we will communicate with you just as soon as we can. So you could see that I'm so non-committal, I wouldn't even delete 7-8 from this slide. I can only put a cross through, but I did commit, and I did cross it off. 7-8 is not going to be the early dismissal plan with 5 days a week. They're going to be the hybrid plan. So on this slide, this is essentially beginning and end times. So the 3.5 hours for K4 and 5-6 would be 8:25 5 for 5-6 to 11:55. They'd have an hour and a half lunch to go and travel for an hour and a half. That's when teachers are getting their lunch and their prep. And then online learning from home from about 1 to the end of the regular school day, or 1:25 to 2:55 for intermediate, and 1:55 to 3:25 for elementary. So they'll have time with their special area teachers, and then time for support and feedback and extended learning from whatever happened in the morning. So another reason that we like the model is that the teacher's there and has done a lot of the teaching in the morning, and they've set the stage for what was going to happen virtually, so that they can chime in and they can support it. There won't be additional live teaching, especially since we know so many of you work during that afternoon time. You might not be there to support. It would be extending what was taking place in the morning. So just, you see in this table, hours of learning, even though, by statute, we have to have 177 school days. Usually it's 180, but it's 177, which we'll get to in regards to the school calendar this year. And you have to have 900 hours of instruction. So when we submit our plans, if we extrapolate out, if we were on this plan all year, you'll see that we would get to 630 hours of in-person and 270 of online, which get us to the 900 hours down here. Excuse me. So although some of us, we may look and say 3.5 hours, that's not long enough. We know that's not long enough. Again, nothing's ideal. I would love for it to be longer, but I think it's appropriate for the transition. And we're going to work to increase it as the year unfolds and our data permits. But even having said that, we're still many more hours in person than we are learning online, still getting to the 900 hours that you have to by law. And again, this is the plan for September. It's not meant to be all year. Although again, by the end of this month, or the end of September rather, we would evaluate this plan and make a decision then on the best approach for October and beyond. So what the 7-12 looks like is 7:30 to 11, so 3.5 hours in person, lunch to go and travel, online learning from home from 12:30 to 2. And the way that that's going to work is they're going to move through all of their classes, 9 through 12 will. They'll move through all of their classes. And if their class is 45 minutes, let's say, during the early dismissal schedule, we'll divide up the online, and they'll have another 20 minutes for feedback and support from the teachers that they had during their normal courses that they were taking on the days in which they were in school, which again, from a hybrid perspective, is either Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, everybody virtual. And virtual learning will be an extension, again, of the in-person learning. So what's nice is that you can think about, and those of you that are educators or like the flipped classroom, or our students are going in and getting the support and getting the teaching, and then the virtual learning is extended from things that were already taught, where they're able to apply, and teachers able to chime in, small groups, one-on-one feedback, etc. Same thing, 630, 270, you get to the 900 hours. So certainly trending, and people that have written to me directly regarding this particular slide. Parents who opt for virtual learning, and the stress that I caused so many folks by asking for people to commit by August 11th. So people ask me, well, which approach are you going to take? There's 3 approaches in your plan. That's correct. And the fact of the matter is, because I don't know how many students are going to be in or opt for the distance learning, and I'm gonna say opt for the virtual learning from home. So I'm not going to say the distance learning as if we were all going to that, but those who opt to continue learning from home, we have the 3 approaches, and I'll just speak. I'll speak freely. The they're not all my favorites, or not all our favorites. So I wrote to Ed and Melissa, who wrote to me, and I'll share this because I think I think it was a really good point. I think so. They wrote to me and they said, we're trying to make a decision for our children, but we don't know what approach you're taking. And I'm sure there's many of you on this call or watching this webinar recorded later who feel the same way. And they said, look, your last bullet through a K-12 online program to offer education across grade levels supported by that's not in line with your personal relationships from your guiding principles. And it's not the best fit with your vision of the graduate. And we know that. That being said, we do need to have that approach because we're planning, and our goal is to work hard to meet the needs of everyone to the extent that we can. And while these first two bullets are our preference, and I think we developmentally, some lend themselves better to others, we may need to employ this last bullet. So I'm going to elaborate a bit on that. In a perfect world, we would have either a teacher dedicated to a virtual class. So if Mrs. Cooney was your teacher, she would have virtual students. She would be able to teach them through a combination of synchronous and asynchronous learning, some recorded, some live, and she would be able to push and be with those students if those students opted for the year, if it was permissible for the year, consistently. It would be a MPS teacher. I guess in a perfect world, it would be perhaps even from your home school and or grade level. But we can't commit. We certainly can't commit to that. We would love that to happen, but we can't commit to that. You also have to understand that we are working with our teachers to see who is coming back and what our workforce is going to be. It very well could be, parents, that you have your heart set on a special teacher, that may not work out that way this particular year. So another option are cameras and microphones. And when we say cameras and microphones, we're really talking about Chromebooks. Some of our Elmos. Our Elmos are projectors that can serve as webcams in addition to being projectors. So from the Chromebook, which has, as you know, already has cameras, so that students can access classroom learning. So in this, traditionally, they're assigned to teacher A. Teacher A teaches 15 kids in the classroom, and there's the 6 kids that opted for virtual learning that they're teaching from home. So that's that model. That model does not work real well with the little ones because the teaching in our lower grades, not saying that that's not going to happen, but in regards to our preference and what we're going to create to meet the needs of families, is going to be what we feel is educationally best as well. And in a perfect world, we'll do a combination of the first 2 bullets for all of our families. That's our goal. But you get to the last bullet, and what if families want to opt for virtual and we don't have the workforce? What if families, and again, there's unknowns, as many unknowns, maybe not as many, but there's a bunch of unknowns for you and there's unknowns for us in regards to the number of students who are going to enroll in this program, the number of students that are going to be in our classrooms, et cetera. So we in our approach are going to maintain the K-12 online program. Think about the subjects that are well, you might not know what subjects are difficult to fill. So specialty like physics, AP calculus, a foreign language. It's not like we have many teachers doing these. And we might come down to you may have a teacher, but we don't have a foreign language teacher to teach you virtually. You may have a virtual teacher in math and reading, but you may have a foreign language teacher on an online program because that's the only thing that we're able to provide for you at this time. So for us, these 3 bullets are broad so that we can attempt to provide families and students with the opportunities and the options that they want. And we want to work with families to employ the best approach. And from those that have written to me, these first two are the parents' preferred options. And I would say that I'm a father and an educator, and those are my preferred options as well. But then I'll tell you, as a leader who needs to find solutions to meet diverse needs, we do need to have this as an option. So some more things that I think we've done, said, or that I've communicated that I know have only increased anxiety, and certainly wasn't the intent, were due dates and things. So if you opt for virtual learning, consistency is important. If you opt for the virtual learning and we go to distance learning, you're going to stay in that track that you were on with the teacher that you were assigned. You're not going to shift over to somebody new during the virtual learning shutdown, during the complete distance learning shutdown. And I want to be clear here, because so many people have written to me and they said, we're prepared to commit to the trimester, or others have said, well, what if they don't like it? And can they switch? We're asking to commit. We're not requiring. We can't require by law. And I want to be crystal clear about that parents who opt for virtual learning commit for the trimester or the marking period, because we're going to make staffing decisions, class size decisions, facilities decisions based on enrollment and the opt-out data, to be perfectly honest with you. That we need advance notice in order to provide and plan for programs that we feel are going to be effective. Now, the first couple weeks of school, you try something. Well, no. If you try and it's it's the 5th day of school and this is not for you, we certainly are not going to impose for the rest of the marking period. We're going to work with you to get you into something that would not to get you into something, but to have you join the other choice, in that particular model, whether it be moving from in-person to virtual or virtual back to in-person. If you cannot endure the rest of the marking period, we certainly are going to ask for notice, especially if that means getting more resources, shifting a class size or teachers, or we want to be prepared. And we're going to make decisions based on, class sizes. And that's important information. So the more notice you can give us, the better. In a perfect world, we would ask you to commit for the marking period, which I think or trimester. The trimester right now is Thanksgiving. So it's 60 days. I think that's 59 days, or 60 days is the 30th, unless we change the calendar, which we will talk about a calendar proposal soon. So the other thing is, I know that it's hard for you to make a decision by August 11th. You want answers to your questions. August 11th, the more, again, it's for us. The more we have, the more answers we have, the better prepared we're going to be with giving you answers. So we have this sort of symbiotic need, this relationship where we need answers from each other. So I just amended that to say by August 11th or as soon as possible. So we kind of touched the hybrid plans. This is here just as a reminder that I think all of us who have children, no matter what district, should be preparing for all plans. And this is in the plan that went out, unlike the September plan. Distance learning, again, I think we already talked about making that improving our distance learning plan. So at this point, I'm gonna, Mrs. Cooney, Assistant Superintendent Cooney, has been reading the questions. It's been at 99 for like 20 minutes, which leads me to believe that it caps out at 99. And we are going to try to answer some. We've allotted an hour, which Shocker, I talk too much, so we're at the hour. We'll go a while longer and see if we can answer as many questions as possible.
Mr. Montini, you've had a lot of questions about the first day of school and what that will be. I think that would be a good place to start.
Excellent. Great, great, great. So the Board of Education is the only authority that can change the school calendar. But I did say publicly at a board workshop earlier, well, the days are a blur. So at some point, maybe about a week ago or earlier this week, might have been Monday, that I was looking to change. I'm going to propose a calendar change on Thursday at the board meeting to have the first day of school be September 2nd. I can't tell you the amount of training. And by the way, we really haven't talked about teachers, but our teachers are going to work so hard. They love your children. They care for your children. They're going to do a great job. We're going to work with them to make them to help them and do a great job. And they're amazing, but there's a lot of training to go on. So, you know, the change in the legislation from 180 to 177, you can change and the number of school days to provide for additional professional learning, which is what we're doing. We're proposing a change in adding Monday the 31st and Tuesday the 1st as additional PD days, because we have a lot of professional learning in regards to all of these plans.
So I'm just going to repeat that you said that that was Wednesday, September 2nd.
Correct.
Someone said you faded out.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you.
And then I just want to also point out that if we do not answer all of the questions in the chat, that we will answer them and add them to the FAQ that's posted on our website. Another person asked if you could show the slide with the times again. There were lots of questions about what time the different schools would be starting for the September plan. So perhaps you could share that again.
Yeah, so that was just show the slides?
Yes.
In the September plan? Yeah, and I can
and we can share this plan out.
Yeah, so everyone starts the normal, those are the normal start times. So 8:25, so I guess it'd be better for me to start with 9:12. So it's 7:30 for the high school, 7:55 for start times. But yeah, we will we'll share it out. So 7:30 to 11 for the high school, 7:55 to 11:25 for the middle school. Those are on those folks will be on hybrid. We do not have information in regards to who's in cohort A or B yet. And then
there were a few questions about that as well.
Great.
How we're going to select who's in cohort A and B and how soon will families find out.
Great, great. So I'll jump right into that next. So grades 5 and 6, 8:25 to 11:55, and K4 11:55 to 12:25. Classes were constructed as they always have been. We're going to take that class minus those who've opt out, or no, even including those in case they opt back in, and we're going to divide the class in half alphabetically to start. However, that starting point, the process that we need to do this in all of our schools, and we need to do this before the start of school, even for the elementaries who are not starting in a hybrid, because we have to work with across schools to make sure that all families and siblings are in the same group A and group B. And our schools will start doing that. Our high school and our middle school will do that sooner than later, and because that's how you're starting. So they'll be working on that, I'm sure, as early as Monday. And you know, if I know those principals, they've already been thinking about it. I just, to be fair, not until this morning or late last night was City Hill in the hybrid, officially.
So we also had a few questions about how we're going to monitor the bathroom usage. And maybe we could speak to what the schools are doing with their school-specific plans.
Yeah. So I think that each school will have be able to answer that. But I do know that we have bathroom protocols in regards to social distancing, hand washing. There's like waiting spots for kids out in the hallway, so no one is within 6 feet. And the cleaning protocols of bathrooms are every bathroom to be used will be cleaned minimum twice a day. High touch areas are going to be cleaned incessantly and continuously throughout the day. And then in addition to that, we are assigning specific bathrooms to the extent that we can to specific classrooms. That doesn't mean that every classroom has a one-on-one, but it does mean that we are trying to cohort our bathrooms to the extent that we can with either in wings or grade levels or et cetera. But every facility is different. So I think school-specific plans, just for those of you that are asking school-specific questions, plans from now to the beginning of the year, schools are going to continue to develop specific schedules, et cetera. That would be one of them.
I honestly am not sure, you may have said this, but in terms of the cohorts, we are going to be flexible with families. So if they need to reach out to us to make a change, then they would reach out to the school to make that change. And we're certainly going to try to work with families.
Yeah, but
based on their individual needs.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's going to be our approach. It doesn't mean that everyone is always, it's not going to work out where everybody gets what they want, but it is going to mean to everybody is that we're approaching this understanding the state, the position, again, as parents, and we want to be as flexible as possible.
Exactly. So if siblings do not have the same last name, we are looking at that currently as we're putting together those groups.
Oh, 100%.
Yes.
100%. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I guess the same would hold true so I had heard from another parent, and perhaps I'm considering this, I don't know what to do. I don't have childcare arranged either. There may be a need where it's not a sibling and they need to reach out because they've worked it out where 2 or 3 people have the same childcare provider, private childcare provider in their home or something. Yeah, we're going to work to be as flexible as possible.
We've had a couple of questions about confirmed cases in our schools and what our policy will be.
Great. I'll start with you shut down for 2 to 5 days based on the CDC guidelines. And that 2 to 5 days is to 1, to deep clean, but 2, to allow the Department of Public Health to effectively contact trace. We don't contact trace, but we do cohort so that we can support the efforts of the contact tracing. We also communicate so that we can help the DPH complete the contact tracing. That usually will take between 2 and 5 days. If that happens, DPH would be contacting families and doing the contact tracing for outside of school activities, as well. And then we would collaborate with DPH to make a determination on next steps, whether it is, let's say, closing down just a cohort within a building for 14 days, whether it's closing the school for 14 days. What would end up happening is that would be the collaboration with the Department of Public Health, and then we would communicate out to all of you. What would happen during that 2 to 5 days is we would transition immediately to distance learning. So they would go virtual for the 2 to 5 days, and then we would determine next steps, and we'd be communicating with you. So what I didn't mention, but it's pretty important, is that kids are going to have to take their Chromebooks back and forth every day. We bought cases, K-12. I guess he's a rising first grader. He might need some support with, that case, or he might need to just get used to it. But the safest thing to do is to be prepared with that Chromebook every single day. So we bought cases for all of them, and we'll be bringing them back and forth every day, hopefully to avoid any kind of mass distribution like we did this year, because that's just not as safe as it traveling personally back and forth every day.
We've had some questions about sports and clubs, and I know we haven't solved this yet,
Yeah.
but how will students get back to school if they participate in an after-school sport or a club? And we have half days.
Yeah.
The month of September.
Yep. Excuse me. So, first, we're exploring the option of students who are in a sport and have a practice after school, depending on the coach, the program, et cetera, of having those students stay in the school and completing that rest of the virtual day in school. So let's say the girls cross country practices at 2:30, the end of the school day. The team might stay in school if it's their day in school and complete the rest of the day virtually while in school, and then go to practice. For those that are not in school on that day, this is that virtual day. This is an idea. It's not set in stone because we haven't, worked it out with the bus company. But we are thinking of 4 community bus stops after the drop off of the elementary to go bring folks back to school for practice. And then there would be no bus home, but traditionally after practice, there aren't buses home anyway. So that's what we are thinking. There's a lot, just to be transparent, in regards to sports that we haven't touched yet. So we will be working to figure out some sports and activity and after school activities. The CIAC did allow them, although there's lots of talk, especially in the world today in opposition to, football and some other programs, just to say that conversation is out there and ongoing.
We've also had some questions about the students or staff members who may have a medical reason and will not be wearing a mask, what our protocols will be for that.
Great. So what we will do is increase the distance. So we will provide 6 feet or greater and plexiglass, and perhaps a face shield if that was in line with sort of their medical need, or that wasn't prohibited by their medical need. But essentially, we would provide additional distance and the plexiglass like trifold as accommodations. Essentially, we'd be making accommodations because we would, based on a disability, which of course is the law.
We also have some questions about our class sizes in the lower grades. So would we consider moving to the hybrid in our K-4 schools if we see that our class sizes are so large that we're not able to safely social distance?
It's a really good question. So I think that question speaks to, my continually sharing fluid and looking at the data, and that is a possibility, but I think that we are going to be in a spot where for elementary where we're going to be able to go to school half day every day, early dismissal every day. It's not a half day.
We've had a couple of questions asking why we don't have our teachers coming back to school to teach virtually and all of our students home learning virtually as our number one option for returning to school.
Oh. So, well, one, even though there's flexibility, there's really flexibility from the governor based on fully in-person or hybrid. It's not complete flexibility to go all virtual. If you go virtual, you have to meet with the commissioner and a team, and you have to provide the data which states why you are unable to either do a hybrid and or a full in-person. We don't have such data at this point. We can do a hybrid, at the very least, we can do a K-12 hybrid right away. So I will tell you that I heard of one community, New Haven, and I heard it on the news, perhaps like all of you, that where their Board of Education voted to go virtual. But I know that New Haven also had some data around community transmission of COVID. And I also don't know if that was approved by the commissioner or not. It was only reported on the news.
We've had lots of questions about childcare options.
Oh, yes, and I did not answer that. So we're working with the Y and Spark to have at least one site-based option in most of our K-6 schools, with Salem and Hillside, because they don't have they're in close proximity to the Y. The practice has been staff from the Y come over to those two schools and walk. So our goal is to have childcare options for parents to privately pursue on site in the majority of our buildings. I would say all of our elementaries except Salem, and perhaps our intermediates, maybe at Cross, if not, working out a way where we can preserve the cohort and have Cross Street students attend the Maple Hill. So I did have someone, ask if we were providing ourselves, if the school system was providing or paying for childcare. We're not, but we are collaborating with some of our community partners to ensure that that parents have some options and opportunities and hopefully we'll be able to put out a notice. I know lots of you have been registering for Spark or for the Y, and we'll be able to solidify those plans and get those out to you soon. We recently met, Assistant Superintendent Cooney and myself, with Spark and the Y, and we had a great conversation, and I think we're close to finalizing some plans.
Mr. Montini, maybe you could speak to our relationship and our collaboration with DPH and our medical director.
Yeah, so, well, I'm going to take one step back and talk first about Deb Sowers, who is our nurse supervisor. Any nurses out there? I know there's some nurses on this call.
There are some nurses on the call.
I know it. Thank you. And I don't even mean our own school nurses. I'm just as a profession. I think, anyway, I don't want to digress, but, when you have a child and you go through having children and you see what an amazing nurse, the impact an amazing nurse can have. So those are the kinds of nurses that we have in Naugatuck, and that's the kind of nurse that we have in our supervisor, who has been collaborating weekly with the Naugatuck Valley Health Department, Jess, who is the head, the director, and our Dr. Rivetto, who is our medical advisor. They have reviewed our plans. We've met with them, and we seek their guidance continuously, and have a great relationship with both of them. They're responsive, and they're great partners to have in this time of need. And thank you to all the nurses out there.
So I'm just going to clarify, when we were collaborating with both the Y and Spark, one of the conversations that we were having was that if the students participated in either program and their school day did not end, that they would have their Chromebooks and they would continue to have that opportunity while they were working in their school day during their time with either program.
Oh, yes.
That came up a couple of times.
Oh, great. And that's great. So yeah, they are aware of we told them our plans so that they can support our plans. In addition to that, the Y did something last year with a distance learning plan on site that they were going to try and make available to support kids' distance learning. But yeah, the plan would be that the rest of the school day, the virtual school day, they know that the kids would have their bag lunches, they would have workspaces set up, and they know the kids would have their Chromebook, and they would complete the rest of the day virtually there, in cleaned and cohorted in separate spaces.
So we continue to have a lot of questions about a timeline for when we will know which distance learning plan we're going to put in place. Perhaps you could just reiterate.
Yeah, I'm going to say that we won't know exactly until close to the start of school. But there are going to be some people that are going to be attached with teachers, and there are going to be some people that are going to have a dedicated, let's say, virtual teacher. And some people are going to be more likely in the upper grades, logging on, accessing the teacher while she's in the classroom teaching the other students in the class.
Perhaps you could also speak to how we're working with those programs to continue to try to maintain some cohorting as best we can. So if we have students that are feeding from other schools, for example, we were going to have them use separate entrances and be in separate locations and use separate bathrooms.
Oh, from childcare, yes.
For the childcare, sorry, yes. I'm circling back to
No,
childcare.
That's okay, yes, absolutely, yep. Yeah, because I'm not saying that we're going to have we haven't allowed that yet. But if it came down to that's the only way that we can get childcare for a particular school, we do have a plan B. Best option is on site in every school except Salem and Hillside. Salem and Hillside are able to walk to the Y. That's the best option. But you have to remember that these private vendors have to get licensed for spaces, and there's approval processes, and so we may have to move forward with a plan B. Look, the distance learning, folks, for those that opt for distance learning, if you opt for distance learning, that helps the in-person class size only if I don't have to take a teacher away for distance learning. If I have to take a teacher away for distance learning, then there is no positive impact on class size for those that are choosing in-person. So as all of us in our employment or in our jobs, we may see, I don't know yet if all teachers are coming back. So it's really, I can't commit to what kind of virtual plan because I don't know all of the staffing and I don't know all of the number of kids that are going to be in the program. So all I could tell you is that it's going to be one of the two bullets, that being a part of the class while the teacher is teaching during the day and accessing that is going to be is much better for 7-12, and the dedicated teacher virtually that's not teaching any classroom kids, that's better K6. So I don't know if that will help you. That's going to be the preferred model by level moving into it. Doesn't mean that it can't happen. It can't happen otherwise. That's our thinking going in. And then we'll utilize that third bullet only when we can't identify a solution for number one or number two.
Mr. Montini, can you?
Yeah, 1 second. You know what I want to say too, and if you find out that you're in an option and doesn't meet your needs, that certainly is going to be cause for us to try to be flexible, and you'll be able to make another choice.
Can you please explain again why we moved to the hybrid plan for the high school and now the middle school?
Yeah, basically the almost 1,300 kids at the high school and 700 kids at the middle school. So what you have is massive amounts of students, and the hybrid allows us to have 50% attend on one day. So you just cut the number of kids in half. So our class size in the middle and high school is not trending as nice as our K6 numbers, number one. Number two, the sheer magnitude of having 1,300 kids get lunch every day, 700 kids getting off the bus, makes it a lot harder for social distancing and a lot of the other mitigation strategies. So basically, because we could not implement those as effective in the large schools because of their size, we made the determination to go hybrid and work in September to try to improve. And by improve, I mean increase time in person. So again, it's not ideal. I think that they certainly would benefit by being in person more often, and hopefully by the end of September, we're able to get there based on really good data and a really successful September.
So we have a couple more minutes. We've had a few questions about students who have IEPs and what that looks like for them in the different models.
Great. So when in person, students will receive their services like they very close to normal, quote unquote normal, as close to normal as has been the case. Traditional perhaps is a better word, and during hybrids, we will work with families to provide services while they're in person, unless that's not the preferred option. So, I mean, if a family says that they would like it virtually, which, I mean, I don't think that's going to happen an awful lot, but during a hybrid model, whenever those days are in person, we would attempt to do it on those days. During virtual learning, so this is, I certainly have written back to a few folks. If you choose virtual and your child has an IEP, we still may be able to and want to be flexible to try and schedule, if you are willing, for you to come in and get related services in person. So you could come in for speech or OT or PT or something to that effect, even if you're on virtual, and get some services in person. If you're uncomfortable with coming into school, but you might be comfortable coming in for a specific 30-minute appointment where you know it'll be short-lived, et cetera, that could be an option for you. If not, then we will create, in conjunction with families, the opportunity plans that were mandated to complete for students with IEPs in regards to the virtual learning, and we'll do that with families to try to create a plan that works for both.
Here's an interesting question. Would we consider redistricting if we saw that we had lower numbers in one school and higher numbers in another?
That is a good question.
Yeah.
So the first thing that we'll consider, and this might not please folks, but the first thing that we'll consider are those that ask for special permission to attend a particular school other than their home school. Every year I do an analysis of this, and most of the time it nets out to have little impact on any one individual class. I guess all things would be on the table if it meant enabling us to get more kids back to school more consistently. If I were to approach that rather than a redistricting, I would perhaps first ask for volunteers. And again, it's not that isn't well thought out, but I would start with the volunteer approach and provide transportation to level off some class sizes. Because whoever is asking that question, whether it's an employee or a parent, we do have quite a range. While our averages are nice, and I'll just give you the average of kindergarten right now. The average of kindergarten is 13.2 after we take out the folks that are opting for virtual learning, but the range is 9 to 19. So I understand, the genesis of that question. Not all, even though the average is in the middle, not all classes are created equal throughout the 5 different schools, at least in that regard. So let's take just a couple more. I think we've been talking for about an hour and a half. We will go for another few minutes, answer the last couple. And then after that, we will, I certainly will thank you for your time, and then we will respond and capture and add those additional questions to our FAQ on the website. You also, by the way, can email myself or Assistant Superintendent Cooney directly.
I'll add our emails right now.
Great. want to double check those questions that
You had at least 2 members of our audience today who asked if they opted for distance learning for the year, would they be allowed to keep that option for the whole school year?
as long as it's permitted by the state of Connecticut. So the state of Connecticut, the way that they're couching the approval is temporary approval. So I would imagine but you know what happens when you make assumptions, you sometimes certainly are not correct. I would imagine that it would be provided for the entire year. If it's allowed in the state of Connecticut, then yes, it will be permitted by the Naugatuck Public Schools. If we land into the traditional schooling and Connecticut, revokes that choice, then we wouldn't be permitted to do so. So I guess the short answer to that is yes, so long as it's allowed by law.
And then maybe we can close with our deep cleaning. You could speak to the deep cleaning a small amount, because there was one question about why we didn't do an AA, a Wednesday deep clean, and a BB. And then I just saw in the feed another question about deep cleaning.
Right. Yeah, so there are some districts that are doing AA virtual Wednesday, BB Thursday, Friday. So take into account 2 things. Take into account the cleaning aspect of it, and then take into account the learning aspect of it. So the classes have to be cleaned and sanitized every single day. Every day, and we have the cleaning protocols and the cleaning materials that sanitize and kill the virus daily. We have to do that, at least daily in high touch areas, like throughout the day, in bathrooms, multiple times a day. So from a cleaning perspective, we're cleaning, it's going to be clean and sanitized every day before students arrive. But if you take, our decision was really based on the education aspect of it. Some students didn't do as well virtually as they did in person. Having them do back-to-back days on a Monday, Tuesday means they're not back in person till the following Monday. Our model spaces it out so that if they fare better, they're not without their teacher for as long a period of time. So we've developed cleaning protocols that we know when we implement them are in line with the CDC, and we're going to clean daily. But ultimately, we liked the Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, so that they didn't have as long a time not seeing their teacher or receiving in-person learning. So I think with that, I will close briefly and thank everybody on this call for taking an hour and a half out of their Saturday and spending time with us. And I just want you to know that we are committed, every educator in this district, every administrator, to working really hard to provide high quality learning experiences to all of our students, no matter the model, no matter the plan. And we are making decisions that will safeguard health and safety. We can't guarantee safety for everyone. I don't think anyone can. I think we've learned, hopefully some of you haven't learned like others in regards to experiencing loss close to you, but we learned that nobody's immune to this virus and that anybody can come down with COVID. And that we also learned and are getting guidance from CDC and the Department of Public Health that based on your data, you are good to open. As a matter of fact, the experts tell you you're good to fully open. But we consider district factors, again, locally, to make our choices, to plan for a transition back, hopefully experiencing and meeting with success throughout the month of September that will enable us to increase the length of the school day and the frequency of attending schools for 7/12, so we can get kids back in person more often safely. It's always going to be our goal. We are teachers. We are all teachers. That's what we chose to do in our careers, and that's what we want. We just want to do it in a way that safeguards the health and safety for all, which is why we are sharing with you our plans in regards to mitigation strategies, and our cohorting and hybrids and all of those things because we do care deeply about your students, our families, our staff. Thank you. Please email us directly if you have any questions. The answers to the questions that were unanswered in the chat will be posted on our website very soon. Thanks and have a good afternoon.